Hello there, I'm Sam. I wouldn't usually consider myself a morning person, but the other day I managed to get up 2 days in a row to watch the sunrise.
Very cold.
While I looked out on the beautiful views of the Lake District and felt how peaceful and quiet it all was, I couldn't help but think back to when my mornings were much more difficult and started with nothing but dread. Times when I could hardly imagine that experiences like this one, enjoyed with a calmer mind, could ever be out there waiting for me.
Hello there, and welcome back to my little art room, or welcome here for the first time. I've been posting videos every week this year, but I struggled last week because I was a bit ill and also just quite run down, and I think it was quite a reminder that I need to make sure that I rest more. And I wanted to have some drawing to share in this video because I thought, well, it's been 2 weeks and I want to keep people's interest in my work, but you know what, I'm just a bit art blocked at the moment and I'm still a bit tired, and I thought instead I might use some of the footage that I took to springboard a bit of a video about my experience in the past with anxiety. I couldn't help but think about how my mornings used to be for a number of years when I was waking up at sunrise to go with my friends and look at that beautiful scenery and just take in nature, and it was so peaceful, and yeah, it just got me thinking about anxiety, and I even actually discussed it with my friend a few times over the weekend, and he was quite surprised by some of the ways that I described my anxiety experience, not really knowing how kind of persistent anxiety can be, and what it can be like experiencing it on a chronic level. I use that term chronic because at the time that is what my therapist described what I was experiencing as a very, very persistent anxiety experience where anxiety is with you every minute. It's in your every waking moment, and it hardly ever kind of lets up. Like, it might increase or decrease in intensity, but it feels like it's something you're dealing with day in, day out for many, many years, and that was how I felt. So just to give some brief context, I just want to say that basically until I was 26, and I'm 28 now, I didn't know that I was autistic, and it's quite complicated to explain, but that made life really, really challenging in a lot of ways. And for particularly a period of about 10 years between being 17 and being sort of midway through how much therapy I've had so far, I particularly struggled. Things particularly got to a very severe level. Anxiety, that chronic anxiety, was just one of the ways that that kind of exhibited itself. And I think it's partly because not knowing you're autistic and not knowing how to navigate your anxiety, because you can't seem to find anything at all that helps, increases your anxiety a lot. At that time, I felt I was forcing myself to live in the ways that other people seemed to deem acceptable. I was pressured to do things a certain way, act a certain way. There were a lot of things that caused a lot of anxiety. Sometimes my routine was all over the place, and I know now that, for example, routine is something that really helps to calm my anxiety. And there's so many things, there's loads of elements that add together. Yeah, I just wanted to give that context that a lot of my anxiety was linked to not knowing I was autistic, and I was able to slowly calm down my level of anxiety through understanding myself better and changing a lot of things about my life and challenging the thoughts that anxiety brought up. But in terms of anxiety as an experience, I hope that this is still relatable for anyone who experiences anxiety. You don't need to be autistic to relate to this video. I just decided to talk about the anxiety, especially to do with my day-to-day feelings, how I would feel in the morning. I wanted to talk about that segment of my experience because it feels very, very overwhelming to consider talking about a lot more than that. Because ultimately, even talking about, the autistic experience is a huge, huge topic that is extremely difficult to explain. The reason I'm doing this briefly is just because I used to find it very comforting to read accounts of how other people were dealing with these things, and I thought hopefully it might be comforting for someone out there, and to know that you're not alone, and that you're not a failure, you're not at fault for these feelings. That's something I want to talk about more later, but I also hope that this might be a good example of a real experience of anxiety that isn't sugarcoated. Um, the British government at the moment are invalidating mental health even more, um, taking away support for people. You see articles every day in the UK about people taking time off for mental health and how it's a strain, and blaming them, and that they're just lazy and they just don't want to work. And in general, in society, a lot of these issues are constantly downplayed and invalidated. And it's a lot to have to deal with on top of a difficult experience of mental illness. So I hope this might give people a perspective on what these illnesses can actually feel like. To talk about anxiety specifically, I think it can be really downplayed, and it's often considered as one of the more like socially acceptable mental illnesses, but the irony is that it's like accepted to the point of it being, only when it is kind of palatable enough for people. And often because people who might describe themselves as mentally well have a reference for anxiety because they felt worried, they felt nervous, I think they often think that anxiety is just that a little bit more, or like just that for a bit longer, or about things that they wouldn't worry about. But it is so much more than that. It is incredibly complex and incredibly difficult to deal with, and yet it is constantly downplayed. And people dealing with anxiety have to hear the very frustrating things of like, just stop worrying, just get it together, just get a grip. In my day, we just got on with things. All these kind of like really unhelpful comments that don't make anyone, feel better. So I don't know, maybe this will give people a different idea of what anxiety is. Although it's obviously just my personal experience, it's just one experience in many, many experiences of anxiety. For many years, for about a 10-year period, I would wake up every morning feeling intense dread. That was how my day began. And I often would I would hate this feeling so much that I would try to sleep it off. I would try and hope that it would go away, but it usually wouldn't. Or it might alleviate a tiny, tiny bit, but only by a fraction. And by the time I got up, which sometimes would be like the middle of the day, my anxiety would definitely have latched onto something, because this is the way things used to happen for me. I would feel this horrible feeling, and my brain would almost be asking itself, what should we worry about? What is there to worry about? Oh my gosh, what do we need to be thinking about? And it could be anything. It could be cleanliness, it could be my health, it could be I've accidentally eaten something that's going to make me ill, it could be to do with, I had a lot of things around chemicals, things like that. Anything could set me off, and anything could be linked to my feelings of anxiety. And so, I'd probably decided for the day what my thing I was going to worry about was. And then I would sort of try and go through the day, but it would be very, very tough. I would be feeling very fragile. I would feel really uncomfortable in my body. I would shower a lot and still not feel really like good, about it. I would struggle to eat. And there are a lot of physical symptoms that come with anxiety as well, such as body aches, muscle aches, digestive issues, and one of the biggest ones I would say fatigue for me, tiredness. I probably slept 4 times as much as I sleep now, and I still would feel tired. And I will say, please nobody use this as an example of, oh, maybe those doctors are right when they say it's just anxiety. Please, please, please. No, you should always, always consult a professional about anything you're worried about to do with your health. Just want to say that while we're talking about this. But I do think people don't realise how much physical suffering can be caused by anxiety. That's the reason I'm mentioning this. There is a lot of genuine pain that can come from experiencing anxiety, not just the feelings of the anxiety, but the things that come with it as well, because I think it's probably to do with your body just being so tense all the time, so stressed, and your body and your mind being so exhausted by it. And it can feel very trapping. Like, I felt very stiff. Moving was difficult. Walking around, it felt like I had a massive weight on my back, you know? And that's how anxiety often feels. It felt like a heavy weight always around me, always on me, always looming over my shoulder. And even like strange things I find can happen with anxiety. Like, when I look back now, it's only kind of now that I'm feeling a lot better, like my anxiety has lowered a lot, that when I look back, I realize how different I was feeling. And for example, I even got into the habit of saying that I have a bad memory. Actually, my memory's all right. Um, it's just that I was so used to like my brain always being in kind of this intense survival mode, that it probably didn't used to prioritize memory. I think there's something to do with that psychologically. Um, because honestly, I can remember times at college and high school better than I can remember like 3, 4 years ago. Like, sometimes I try to remember. I had 3 lecturers at uni that were kind of like significant, and I can picture them, but I can't remember their names. Sometimes I really, really try, and I think I can remember like the first letters of their names or something, but other than that, it's a complete blank. And sometimes it feels quite uncomfortable to ask myself those questions. But yeah, it's a reminder that I definitely did not have, like, I was not retaining things in the same way that I am now. When you're experiencing this chronic level of anxiety, for me, there was a lot of like disassociation associated with it, disassociation happening with it, where like I wasn't really very present, and I was kind of like outside of myself. That's how it kind of feels. You feel like the things around you are happening, but it's almost like a play that's happening. You sort of feel like you're not in the room and you're not fully connected to yourself. Sometimes that kind of feeling happened because of probably autistic masking as well. But other times when I was just completely on my own and I was just going through life, I know that, yeah, I was very disassociated from the world. Things didn't feel very real. I felt very awful in myself, and I felt sort of fuzzy and out of it. It's so much different now. I feel that for me, like now, the each day feels different. I'm noticing things more. I actually notice the seasons changing. I'm present. I'm experiencing things. I'm taking things in. Uh, and yeah, my memory feels so much more full now compared to then, where sometimes things are just complete blurs, or it's almost like it feels dark. If I think about it, it's like it's dark. Um, yeah, it's quite strange. I think another thing that was really significant that I noticed recently was how much this kind of burdensome level of anxiety has lifted. Like, obviously, I still experience anxiety. I experience some level of anxiety in my day-to-day life. It's almost impossible. I would say it's impossible to never feel anxiety, but also, like, as an autistic person, a lot of the world is kind of sometimes at odds with the way I am. Everything's a bit fast and busy and noisy, and things can cause me anxiety that other people would probably find completely fine, and that's true of a lot of people. It's not just autistic people. I'm not just free from anxiety, but that chronic level has definitely turned down. I do this movement because I kind of like having metaphors for things. And one of the metaphors for my anxiety in my head was that it was sort of like a very loud, annoying radio that over time I was able to sort of just turn down. And sometimes it's still there, rumbling in the background, but it's not annoying me anymore. And if it does turn up a little bit sometimes, it's okay, I can just turn it back down. And I'm able to calm it a lot easier. And these days, logic is my best friend. It helps me a lot to nip um, difficult thoughts in the bud, so to speak. Helps me to shut down the way my brain reaches for something to worry about. And I also learned to accept that life does have risk and that bad things can happen, but I can manage it and that's okay. Those were some of the things that helped me. But the thing I was talking about that was really significant that I remembered, that I realised, was how this burden of anxiety in the past soured everything, affected everything. Like, Some days I might have seen completely fine a lot of the time. Outsiders, you could have seen me like laughing, talking, smiling, making my art, doing things. But that burden of anxiety is always there, always with you, slightly bringing down almost any experience. Like, it struck me recently that when I'm laughing now and when I'm smiling, when I'm sitting watching TV and commenting on things, there's no sense of forcing myself to do it or trying to do it just to seem all right. And when I am laughing and stuff, it's light. It's just easy. It just comes easily. There's not this thing weighing it down in the background, souring every good thing, every nice moment. It's a hard thing to explain how it feels, but it's like a bittersweetness. It's like everything you're experiencing has this edge of darkness to it, this edge of fear, because that fear just never leaves you. It's just always, always around you. Um, and that is that, like I say, that chronic level of anxiety that is just so incredibly exhausting in ways that I cannot describe, ways that make you lose hope, ways that drive you to very dark places. And I don't think people appreciate that anxiety can do that. But trust me, it can. And yes, it's just such a relief to laugh and enjoy simple things and be in the moment and be present and actually just do that and not have this darkness to everything. The world is hard enough. I want to treasure the good parts of it, and I'm really glad that I can now. And honestly, in the past, one of the really hardest things about it was that I knew I had a good life. I knew that there were so many people in the world that had way worse situations than me, that were going through incredibly hard things that I could not even imagine. That, like, honestly, I couldn't even fathom what it would be like. And here I was in my cozy bed, in my clean environment, in my, the roof over my head, warmth, food in the fridge, and parents that cared about me and support my artwork, and people that were rooting for me, and friends. I didn't always have friends during this really dark period, or I didn't see them very much. But honestly, when I was in that state, it wouldn't have mattered whether I had 100 friends or one or none, because it didn't affect it. Because even though I knew, like, I had a good life, I just could not break free of these feelings and of this anxiety. A lot of the time, I think deep down, I was like, I must just be a really ungrateful person. Even though logically I could think, no, I am grateful and I am appreciative. I was like, maybe deep down, I'm just a bad person who's just not grateful enough and not brave enough and who's just too weak to fight this. And I'm really just pathetic, and I don't have a shred of the strength and moral strength of somebody going through things that are 10 times worse. And meanwhile, I was not very equipped to help anybody else. So, I equally felt guilty about that as well, because I was like, not only can you not just be grateful for your life, but you're not helping anybody else while you're at it. And the thing is all that guilt and shame that builds up because of that, and the way that you tell yourself that it's your fault and that you're a failure and there's something deeply wrong with you, all that stuff just makes everything worse. And it just means that, moving forward from that anxiety gets harder, way harder. And the reality is, all of those things aren't true. It's not your fault, and you're not a failure, and there's nothing wrong with you, and it's okay. But it's very hard to know that when you're in that place. Deep down, I think a lot of people feel that, and it doesn't matter what anyone else says, they believe that to be true. And it's very, very hard, and it only makes the experiences even worse. Yeah, I know what it's like to be in that place. I suppose I wanted this to be an honest reflection on the past difficulties, and hopefully a bit of a hopeful, look at the present as well, where honestly it's quite surreal, but I feel quite well, which is something I never thought I would say. And I'm able to think about other things, what art I want to make, what, causes I want to contribute to, how I want to help people, a nice thing I want to do for my friend. You know, things like that are on my mind so much more than all these horrible thoughts. And that's a really, really good thing. But I know how isolating it is. And I don't feel like I've covered everything. It's impossible to cover everything in one video. I feel like there's so many things I could say and more aspects to the experience and more, you know, things I could talk about. But I don't want to go on forever and I don't want to kind of overcomplicate the video. But I would say to anyone watching this, I really feel that we can help each other by offering a listening ear. Listening is really undervalued and underappreciated, but being willing to listen with empathy, with openness, like resisting this urge to like just dismiss it and just ignore it or just panic and not want to hear it. Because I think a lot of people are just frightened. You know, they're frightened to hear someone they love is suffering. But if you can try to listen and give space for it and allow yourself to be uncomfortable, allow yourself to have uncomfortable conversations with people that you care about, you could be a really valuable listening ear for that person. It's not to be undervalued how important just being heard is and just feeling that you can talk about these things without the typical dismissal and shutting down of the conversation. Even if you don't understand, try to accept that. Just try to think, I don't understand, but I can try and be there for this person anyway. I think that's a good thing. Thank you so much for watching this video. This was my third attempt. Third time lucky, let's hope. I had a bit of a technical issue on the second one, so that was more the issue. But yeah, thank you so much for watching my videos and for being here. And yeah, as my work is so much about mental health a lot of the time, and I want it to be more so, I'd like to make some pieces about anxiety actually. I felt that it was probably okay to not show so much art this time and to talk about the topic in general. So yeah, I'm always really interested to hear your thoughts. I read all the comments. I love being suggested books to read and stuff to look at. Thank you so much for all your thoughts on things, which are always really interesting. And thank you so much for your support and for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that if you're somebody out there experiencing anxiety, this could have been even the smallest comfort to you. And if it is, I'll feel really glad of that. So thank you so much, and maybe I'll see you next time. Okay, goodbye.
I just wanted to end this video by showing you my typical morning routine as it is now. I wake up at about 7:30 or 8 and I drink green tea and I eat porridge. Sometimes I have this after my shower, but sometimes I just want to cozy in bed and watch TV. I have a very basic skincare routine, but I do make sure to put sun cream on if I'm going outside, and I like to sit and write in my little diary. I also like to practice with my Korean flashcards, although I definitely need to study some more. It's not sunrise in the lakes, but to be honest, these mundane mornings are almost as special to me. Okay, last thing I promise, just a reminder that I do sell prints and postcards and cool stuff, zines about dogs and zines a bit about mental health. I don't have loads on there at the moment, although I do have actually quite a lot of originals for sale. But yes, if you could ever support me in that way, I'd be so grateful, and I hope to sell my comic Toast in the Machine soon too. Till next time.